The information and opinions you hear on the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show are those of the hosts, guests, and callers and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this station, its affiliates, its management, or advertisers. The Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show is for entertainment purposes only. Please consult a professional regarding your personal investment needs. Nothing presented on the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show constitutes an endorsement, recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or security.
And now, Lifestyles Unlimited presents the Real Estate Investor Radio Show. Over the next hour, we unfold your map to financial freedom. You'll learn how to retire through investing in single family and multifamily real estate. You'll learn how to create cash flow and build wealth so you can have the time and money to live the lifestyle you want.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is Andy Webb with Lifestyles Unlimited. And as always, we're working on your financial freedom. And you've probably heard the phrase before, real estate is local, or a slight variation, all real estate is local. Just what does that mean? And how does that apply to you if you want to be a real estate investor? Can you live where you want, wherever that may be, and still double, triple, even quadruple your net worth in just a handful of years if real estate is local? And can you create the passive income, the cash flow that we talk about from real estate, passive income that you need to replace your earned income from the job and be able to retire in under 5 years if real estate is local? If it's local, what if your local market stinks? What if you don't live where it makes sense to invest in single family or in apartments? Well, hey, you've probably heard this. If you've listened to the show before, you've heard us say it at some point. Live where you want. Invest where it makes sense. We're going to talk about that. And I'm going to break it down for you. I have some really good news, actually. Despite all the doom and gloom we're hearing out there, I've actually got some very awesome information regarding those great markets that you should be looking ahead to as we roll towards 2023. We're going to talk about those. But I do want to answer that question. What does that phrase mean? All real estate is local. If I start by just leveraging my foreign language experience, I speak a number of languages, and it's interesting. In foreign languages, they kind of have the split, the bifurcation between what we would call real estate and personal property is a little more clearly, more simply delineated. If I take German, for example, Mobilien, you can kind of hear it if you look at the roots, Mobilien, mobile. Right? It is mobile. And if you search that word, the German word in Google, you're going to get the word chattel back. Chattel. Maybe may not have heard that in a while. It's more of a legal term these days. And that's technically what we would refer to personal property in English. We don't really use it that much anymore. It does have some negative connotations, but it's basically anything that is mobile, anything that is movable, Mobilien. Well, what's the German word for real estate? You just add the negating prefix, Immobilien, and you get real estate, not mobile. Very simply put, in that language, in Russian, I can spell it out there. It's the same thing. They just add that negating prefix. There you have it. Very easy dichotomy. So real estate is local because first and foremost, it is not mobile. It cannot be moved. And if it cannot be moved, well, it's inherently subject to whatever it may be going on at that time in that local market. That's what makes it local. That's what that phrase really is hinting at, is that real estate is local in the sense that you're subject to what's going on in the city council at that level, down to the neighborhood level sometimes. What's going on with eminent domain? Is anything coming up? All of this stuff is local. If I put my realtor hat on and take a look at it from a contract perspective, if you've done any investing or just bought your own house here in Texas, where I sit, I'm in Dallas-Fort Worth, you've probably used, or your realtor has used, the Texas Real Estate Commission, the TREC contract. And paragraph 1, I think it says land improvements and accessories. That's essentially what you're putting under contract. It defines each of those. The land, obviously, that's the ground, doesn't change. Improvements, that's the sticks and bricks, anything that's affixed, permanently installed. Built in. And then accessories, they've changed this definition over the years, but relates to curtains, curtain rods, blinds, window shades, draperies, all that fun stuff that in theory is affixed. Any keys or whatever go with the property, of course, are accessories as well. By the way, if you are buying a house that has a shed, well, that's considered personal property. If you want to keep the fridge, if you want to offer and buy the fridge as well, that's personal property. And there is a non-realty items addendum that you want to include along with that contract with the pricing that you're assigning to those personal items. So that's the non-realty item. So we've got realty, we've got real estate. And I know there's some people out there thinking as well, hey, I've seen these TV shows where they move an old house. Can you move a house? Yeah. I actually have a buddy on the other side of Fort Worth. He bought 4 pier and beam houses years ago, bought them at auction and moved them from wherever they were in Fort Worth to some land east of town. So yeah, you can actually move a house. I suppose that's the exception that proves the rule. But on the whole, real estate is local. Looking ahead to 2023, we're getting pretty darn close to closing out the year. So start formulating your goals, start thinking about what you want to do in the coming year. And I think some of this information can help you fine tune the where you want to do it part of the question. So real estate is local. And I do want to correct a small thing I said a moment ago. I was talking about the purchase contract here in Texas. Paragraph 1 is actually the parties to the contract, Andy Webb and seller. And then property is defined in paragraph 2. We talked about that. That's the land. That's the improvements. Those are the accessories. There may be exclusions. When we bought our personal house, the seller really wanted those curtains that were in the room that was for them, their baby's room. Yeah, go ahead, take them, no problem. And if you want to include what we now defined as personal property as part of that contract, there's a whole separate addendum for that. That shed in the backyard, that is not real estate, that is mobile, that is movable, that is chattel in essence. So you want to separately call that out if you're going to buy a property or rental property that has that type of fixture that you want to keep as well, if you want to do it correctly. So real estate is local. My market stinks. What do I do? I already referenced it in the prior segment. It's a pithy phrase that we use here at Lifestyles Unlimited. And it says it all. Live where you want, invest where it makes sense. Your market may not make sense. That's okay. We were cruising around in the RV bunker a month and a half ago up in Colorado, New Mexico, panhandle of Texas. And I did a lot of these radio programs from the road. And when I'm on the road, I like to interview guests that are maybe a little bit farther afield. And I talk to a lot of people that are doing that very thing from places like Colorado, living in Colorado, investing where it makes sense. Kentucky, Rhode Island, California. We've all heard about California. Maybe that doesn't make sense because the prices are too high and things are up and down and it's a roller coaster ride just like your 401k right now. So may not make sense. Well, great, Andy. Okay, fine. What markets make sense? That's what we're going to talk about. And a listener actually sent me an article which kind of queued this up for me. And to you listening right now, whether on the radio or catching the podcast afterwards, I always appreciate it. If you have any good information or you see an article like we're going to take a look at today, send it my way. I'm always thankful for material. Or maybe you just have a question. You can email me as well. Send me an email to askandy@luinc.com. That's Lifestyles Unlimited Incorporated. askandy@luinc.com. Get some of your questions on the air from time to time. I know if it's on your mind, it's probably on somebody else's mind. And then again, today's show, I really appreciate the article. Now, I'm going to lean on this article for the next couple of segments here. And I'm going to lean on the underlying report. All right, this is a local article that was here in the Dallas area, referencing this underlying data. But if you've been listening to this program for a while, whether it's me talking or Mike Harrison or Al Gordon or, of course, Del Walmsley, the founder of Lifestyles Unlimited, you know that we've been talking about these very markets for some time now. And, Lifestyles Unlimited, we've had these markets on our radar for some time now. Why do you think we've been opening realty offices in the locations that we have? Lifestyles Unlimited as a company is very forward-looking in that sense. So as we go through this article, just remember, we've been talking about this. We've been talking about this for some time, but new information, more information. I like how it's packaged here. So I do want to share this with you. So let me grab my notes here. The first place I went, this is what the listener sent me. This was an article this was DallasExpress.com. So you can go to that website if you want to find this. This was published on November 14th. The author, the writer, staff writer is Andrew Terrell, don't know. We've got a town east of Dallas here called Terrell, Andrew Terrell. And the title of the article, it's DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth, DFW ranked number 2 real estate market to watch. Again, if you've been listening to us for any period of time, you know that Lifestyles Unlimited has actually been present with a sticks and bricks, brick and mortar office here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for quite some time. I joined as a member back in 2012, and Lifestyles was here well before that. Founded in Houston, by the way, so grew up in Texas as an organization over 3 decades ago. So we've been around for a while. But this article, this is in Dallas, and DFW has been ranked the number 2 real estate market to watch. Now, this article itself, I want to give you the underlying information. It's referencing a study called Emerging Trends in Real Estate. And this is a publication that comes out regularly. This is the 2023 edition. So looking forward, this is published by PricewaterhouseCoopers and the Urban Land Institute. So 2 organizations that are very good with data, very close to real estate, very, very good at what they do. And their study, it's a long one. I've looked at the underlying information as well. I have not read the whole thing. It is 109 pages long. So if you're a data junkie, go take a look at that. You can find that if you go to that DallasExpress.com news article. There's a link to the underlying study there. But it does focus, I just want to make you understand, it focuses on all types of real estate, not just single family and multifamily like we do at Lifestyles Unlimited. Like I said a moment ago, mobile homes, forget it. We're laser focused on single family and multifamily, on apartments. But this study, it looks more broadly. And just to hearken, the article itself is a good place to start if you don't want to read 109 pages, and I did not want to read 109 pages. It collects a good portion of the highlights for us. Specific to my area, Dallas-Fort Worth, that is local for me. And happily for me, it is not one of those markets that stinks. In fact, it says it remains one of the country's most attractive real estate markets, ranking number 2 among what they're calling the must-watch markets heading into 2023. And the number 1 market, if you're curious, that's Nashville. By the way, that's also one of the places where Lifestyles Unlimited does have their realty teams. So I mentioned the data that the PwC and ULI put together. It's based on surveys, interviews with industry professionals, people like myself perhaps, other investors, fund managers, developers, property companies, lenders, brokers, advisors, consultants, all these people, everybody that's involved in the industry. So you got a lot of heavy hitters. You got a lot of people putting input in here that know what they're talking about. And it gives us an outlook now for the future. Now, this article, of course, this is in a Dallas newspaper. It's focused on our markets, of course, and it specifically references the surge of demand for Texas real estate. It's not just Dallas-Fort Worth. It has spread, as they put it here, it has spread to all corners of the state, in spite of evidence elsewhere outside the state of decelerating, or maybe you might call it, and they call it here in air quotes, normalizing prices and slowing housing demand. Housing demand is slowing, as we know. We've talked about this on prior shows. It's slowing due to higher interest rates, higher mortgage rates. But Texas is still very highly in demand, and they're seeing this in this study. They're projecting forward into 2023. All real estate is local, and if you're in anywhere in the great state of Texas, just that first couple of paragraphs that I looked at as I read through this, good news for you and for me. If you're not, do you have to get here to Texas? No, you should. But you can invest here and in some other markets. We're going to talk about those other markets when we come back.
Got questions? Call Lifestyles Unlimited at 855-497-4335. The Real Estate Investor Radio Show continues next.
What would you say to women out there, Kelly, if they're thinking about doing this, if they're sitting out there right now going, I'm trapped with a glass ceiling where I work, I know I can't go up any further, there's no room there. What would you say to them about becoming their own boss?
Well, you can decide to stay where you're at and keep trying to crack that glass ceiling. But at the end of the day, in this environment, it is so easy, to be able to get out of that mold. People know me and they come up to me and they're very gracious, and they don't look at me and say, oh, you're a woman, I'm not gonna invest with you, I'm gonna go over here. There's no real gender there.
Are you ready to be part of a world where there are no glass ceilings, no gender bias, no limits? Start like award-winning real estate investor Kelly did. with the online free workshop. Register at lifestylesunlimitedworkshop.com.
Listening to Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show will change your life. Now, here's your host.
Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Andy Webb. If you're just now tuning in, this show will be archived. You're going to want to go back and hear the first couple segments of the show. You can go to lifestylesunlimited.com, click on the radio button. If you did catch the earlier part when I referenced some of the shows I recently did with out-of-state people that are investing here in Texas, for example, you can hear their interviews as well. Maybe you'll identify with one of them. Maybe you're in one of those markets that's outside of Texas and you need to invest. Find that local market that is not your own miserable market that makes sense. And we just talked a little bit about Texas. The article that we're looking at, this just came out a couple days ago. Listener forwarded this to me. Big thanks there. DFW ranked number 2 real estate market to watch. This appeared in DallasExpress.com, and they're referencing a report called Emerging Trends in Real Estate. This is the 2023 edition put out by PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and the Urban Land Institute. So they've gathered a lot of data, and they're looking forward. They're looking forward at places of interest in the real estate world. They've talked across a broad spectrum of people that are involved in the industry. And we've heard that pretty much all of Texas is in the spotlight. There's demand despite what we're seeing elsewhere in the nation. Keep that in mind when you listen to your nightly news and they give you some statistic about real estate. That's typically going to be some national average, some national number. That is completely irrelevant to you and your local market. Now, yeah, it's interesting to see what the interest rates are doing and mortgage rates because that has an impact. We just heard that. But we also heard is that despite the deceleration, normalization, whatever we're seeing in prices elsewhere, Texas real estate is on fire. It says almost every market in the country received lower ratings. This is a quote, lower ratings for both investment and development prospects this year, illustrating that outlooks are darkening just about everywhere. Again, going back to that nightly news, they're going to be latching on to that darkening, to that mood. It's negative. It's going down. And this is all following the post-COVID thrill, the exuberance that we all experienced when everything went skyrocketing, just crazy. And in their analysis, we heard that Dallas-Fort Worth is number 2, but it's not the only Texas metroplex that's in the top 15. Austin came in number 4. San Antonio, number 12. Houston, number 14. These were all top markets per PwC and ULI to keep an eye on. And I say, why keep an eye on? Get involved in those markets. Start investing in 2023. Places to review. And just to take a couple more quotes from the Emerging Trends in Real Estate detail, they say these markets, referencing those 4, are large and diverse, but still affordable. They're forming powerhouse economies that attract a wide range of businesses. Despite their large population bases, right? We see those big population bases, this is Andy interjecting, on the coast where things aren't maybe going as well. Despite that, most are still the fastest growing markets in the United States. What we're talking about here are fundamentals. Fundamentals. Still growing, diverse, affordable. Those are all key words in a market where I want to invest. And it goes on. It's interesting. They've bucketed the various markets in a way that I found very interesting. They have these groupings called magnets. And the magnet markets, I think, are the interesting ones. These are migration destinations for both people and companies. And I can't tell you the number of shows I've done or my fellow hosts have done on companies that are moving where? Here, Texas. But not just Texas. So if you take a closer look at this very detailed report, the subgroups, not going to go through all those, but the very top subgroup that they name here, they call it the Super Sunbelt. Super Sunbelt. What have we been talking about on this very show for months, probably years now, is that very same term, Sunbelt. Sunbelt markets are huge. There's a really good graph here. Obviously, I can't really show you that on radio, but they've mapped the status, I guess, or the ranking of the Sunbelt markets from 2011 through to their projection in 2023, and the trend line is going where? It's going up. And then they've mapped the Midwest and Northeast markets Over that same time period, where's the trend line going? It's going down. So if you're in one of those markets, that doesn't make sense, that all real estate is local, but your local market stinks, well, there you've just heard in very broad terms where you can invest that does make sense, and that's the Sun Belt. Those Sun Belt markets, they call those, that's a subgroup of the magnet market. Magnet, again, because it's bringing people, it's bringing jobs, right? We've heard some of the tech companies on the west side of our country, they've started layoffs. What's that going to do to the real estate market in California? I don't know. We'll see. Things are trending down in a lot of the country, as we heard, darkening the mood, as we've heard already. But things, jobs, people, companies still moving here to Texas. So that magnet, that pull, it's very, very strong. And we just heard why. Diverse, affordable, fastest growing. So keep those things in mind as you think about 2023 and what do I want to do. And when we look at those top 14 markets, I don't know why they cut it off at 14. My mind says 15 or 20, but they cut it off at 14. Number 1, I already mentioned Nashville. Number 2, Dallas-Fort Worth. Number 3, Atlanta. Number 4, Austin. They call Austin, it's not a super Sunbelt market. They've grouped that in supernovas. Hey, 30+% appreciation in 1 year, I can understand why. Supernova, Austin, number 4. Number 5, Tampa, St. Petersburg. Number 6, Raleigh-Durham. We are not present with realty offices there at the moment. Could that change? I don't know. But I know we've got a lot of investors that are operating in those markets. Miami and Boston, number 7 and 8. Phoenix, number 9. We have a brick and mortar office in Phoenix, Arizona. San Diego, well, that is California. Number 11, all real estate is local. Number 12, San Antonio, definitely a big presence there as Lifestyles Unlimited. Number 13, Orlando. Number 14, Houston. We are in 7 of those 14 markets that I just named for you, either with our brick and mortar offices or with our realty team. So where are we exactly? Where is Lifestyles Unlimited? If you're outside of one of these shining Sunbelt markets, one of these super Sunbelt markets or Supernova Austin, if you're outside of these markets, how do you invest? Well, you live where you want. Like we said, you invest where it makes sense. Today's show is founded on a great article that a listener sent me. It's given me a lot to think about, and I get excited about reading this stuff because I am an active investor, and I'm always on the hunt looking for the next place to go. And boy, I don't have to go far. I'm in Dallas-Fort Worth, and Dallas-Fort Worth, as we've just heard, is ranked number 2 as the real estate market to watch, one of them to watch going into 2023. Number 1 was Nashville, and all of our major markets here in Texas were in the top 14. That's where they cut off the list of the top grouping, and there are many other groupings in here. If you want to learn more, the article I was referenced or was sent is at dallasexpress.com, and there's a link in there to the underlying very detailed report, emerging trends, and it looks not just at the U.S., it's also looking at Canada in a separate part of the report. I don't invest in Canada. I'm focused very much here in the U.S., but you may be. We have international members, international listeners, so you may be interested in that part of the report as well. Of course, they're looking across the broad spectrum of real estate. That could include commercial, that could include retail type properties, but they do dial into things like rentals, single family houses. In fact, they do mention that as a continuing need. And we've heard that in Texas, that need will continue because what are we here in Texas? Our markets, they are magnet markets. They are bringing jobs and they are bringing people. A lot of people are getting out of those colder environments. I didn't really talk about that. I don't think it went into that in the article. It is referenced in the report itself, but getting out of those colder environments and coming into what? The Sunbelt states. And they call those super Sunbelts, the big markets that are really the ones that you want to look forward to in the coming year. Now, if you're outside of those markets, how do you invest afar? We started talking about that a moment ago, and a big part of that puzzle for you and for me, I'm doing that as well. It's having the infrastructure in place and the team to support you. You know, I got a lead recently that was out of town, different place. I don't know the contractors there. I just don't have the network. Well, if I want to go into that market, I'm going to build that up. I'm going to build that out. I'm going to get the infrastructure into place. If it's somewhere that Lifestyles already is, I don't have to think twice about it because that infrastructure is there. When we bought our first 2 houses around Houston, I'm in Dallas-Fort Worth, if you're just tuning in, I just got onto the vendor portal and I found everything I needed there. If I need a general contractor, I go there to find that around the Houston area. If I need an electrician, AC, company, foundation company, lender, hard money or conventional. I find all of that on the vendor portal. That's part of that infrastructure that supports me as I look into these other markets. If I'm thinking about single family, let's talk about single family. In fact, a lot of people start there. And one of the interviews I had a month or so ago was with Kara. I probably mentioned her before. She's in Colorado, and I mentioned her because she is specifically doing single family from Colorado in Houston and leveraging that very infrastructure that I'm talking about. You do not have to be present. You do not have to go to that market. You just need to build that team. That's where we can help you. So she's able to tap into that. I've been able to tap into that for our single family houses. Network is hugely important. That house I just referenced, we got a lead on. I wasn't interested, but I've got a network that's in that area. And I immediately talked to my next closest investor friend that's there. I said, hey, do you want to take a look at this? They're on it. So having a network in that area is important as well. If you've never been to Macon, Georgia, or Chattanooga, Tennessee, you can still build that up from afar. The internet is an amazing, amazing thing these days that can help you as a real estate investor. It makes that far-flung component much more local for you. Live where you want, invest where it makes sense. It can be in-state, it can be out of state. But how do you do that? Well, it takes education. You as a passive investor, just like we want our lead investors to be educated, we want you to be educated as well, so that you understand the business plan when you read it, so you know what questions to ask when you first meet that potential lead, that potential syndicator. What do you say? What do you do? What kind of questions? How do you interact? We talk about that a lot at Lifestyles Unlimited. And there's a lot of education on being a passive investor. In fact, we've got a mentor that is dedicated specifically to the passive investors for apartments. Now, if you want to learn more, I would encourage you to go to one of two places, or go to both. First of all, I mentioned our website, lifestylesunlimited.com. You can go catch the radio programs there. Sign up for our free workshop. It's just an hour and a half of your time. It's free. And you can learn more about what we do both in the single family space as well as apartments. But I think more importantly, get into some numbers. Well, how do you do that? I think you should go check out some of our case studies. And if you're not local to Dallas-Fort Worth like I am, it's hard to drive down to the offices in Las Colinas and go to that case study in person. But you can do that online. Go to lucasestudy.com. That stands for Lifestyles Unlimited. lucasestudy.com. And I mention this because at the case study, we're going to have presenters, actual real life people that have bought their first single family house, or maybe their eighth, and they've got a portfolio and they're going to talk about that. And then we'll have an apartment investor get up there and talk about those apartments. And we've had the last case study I went to, in fact, passive investor talked about what he's done over a decade as a passive investor, how that passive investing in apartments retired him, how it grew his net worth, how it's created cash flow. It's helpful to get those numbers so you understand the why. I just gave you a lot of the markets. I gave you the where. If you want to learn more, again, go to DallasExpress.com to read that article, and go to LifestylesUnlimited.com to join our free workshop, check out our case studies, and tune in next week. I thank you for listening. You have a great day.
The information and opinions you hear on the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show are those of the hosts, guests, and callers. The Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show is for entertainment purposes only. Please consult a professional regarding your personal investment needs. Nothing presented constitutes an endorsement, recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or security.